אנו מתכבדים להזמין את קפטן וו, הגאון שנית עשר הקלה.
Captain, my captain, that fleeting moment has now fled. Catch the rose in my hand, because you felt cold and dead. I was looking for a crossroad to choose a way, but it's not time for my road, and I can't go away. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgotten old in a bar. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgotten old in a bar. I ripped all the pages full of lies, even destroying all the poems. Danceable, I could not find anything to make my life unforgettable. And we have to open up our eyes. Let's stop to cover our mouth, keep fighting to find our voice, 'cause we wanna cry out. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgotten old in a bar. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgotten old in a bar. Slowly her cities are falling down. People are died on the ground. There are no heroes to save our lives, and now we have to reach you in heaven. Captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgetting old in a bar. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it seems too far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgetting old in a bar. Oh captain, my captain, I would stay here, but it
Smile,
seems too
smile.
far, 'cause I would like to live being young, forgetting old.
What are you doing, Shaka?
Forgotten old.
You're holding Captain Wu's hand. Can you smile?
On behalf of our family, we would like to thank all of you who have joined us this morning, afternoon, and evening to commemorate the Sheloshim, the 30-day mark since the passing of our beloved Captain Woo, Todros Ben Mayer, Zichrono Livracha. We thank everyone who learned Mishnayot, gave tzedakah, charity, did acts of kindness, and smiled in memory of Woo. We know that Woo would have appreciated, and we believe from where he is smiling his beautiful smile from ear to ear, and he would certainly thank you, as we do. We would like to request that everyone stay muted until after my father speaks at the end, and then we can all unmute ourselves and have a chaotic conversation. We hope that next year for the Yahrzeit, we won't need to be on Zoom and we will all be together. I would like to call upon my brother Dov to make the siyum.
Yisrael, sorry, can you mute yourself, Yisrael Feldman? Just because you keep popping up. Thanks. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for learning. I was looking over the last Masechet, the last tractate of the Mishnah, Masechet Oktzin, and it's about peels of fruit and if they are makabel tuma, if they can become ritually impure or not, and all kinds of things like that. And I was thinking, what the heck does this have to do with woo-woo? And so I was looking a little bit about gematria of some stuff, maybe trying to figure that out. And I was looking up the Hebrew numerical value of Todros, and I found a few interesting things. I'm sure Wu would like to know that he shares gematria with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, which is interesting. Also, Ahava Asura, which is forbidden love, which is just an interesting thing. But actually, Solomont with the Aleph, is actually the same gematria of Bemodi'in, in Modi'in, which is actually where Wu was buried. So that's interesting. Still nothing that great, but I think when I was reading through the Mishnah, I was reading the last Mishnah, and I think the writers of the Mishnayot knew that people would be using the last Mishnah of Shas to make big siyums and to be used at different events. So they actually made it easy for us, and it doesn't have to do with fruit and peels of fruit and things like that. The first phrase, the first sentence, I guess you would say, is Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lanchil Lekol Tzadik v'Tzadik Shalosh Meot ve'Eser Olamot. Hashem will give all tzaddikim, righteous people, an inheritance of 310 worlds. As it says, Lanchil Ohavai Yesh Votzrotehem Emaleh Shneimar, I will give substance as an inheritance to my loved ones, and I will fill their treasuries. Where the substance, when they say substance, it's the translation of yesh, which is a gematria of 310. And the commentators say that when the righteous people move to the next world, they will have 310 times the amount of goodness that they had here in this world. But the second part and the last part of the Mishnah adds importance, adds a very important part. And Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, Lo matzah Kadosh Baruch Hu kli machzik bracha l'Yisrael el hashalom. That God, the only vessel that God could find with which to bring peace to this world, to bring goodness to this world, to bring blessing to this world, is with peace. Shene'emar, as it says, Hashem oz lemo yiten, Hashem yivarech atamo b'shalom. As it says, Hashem will give strength to his people, and Hashem will bless his people with peace. So the Mefarshim explained that the only way that the tzaddikim, that these righteous people will get this extra 310 worlds that are spoken about, is if they bring peace to the world, and we have peace among ourselves. And how learning Torah is a conduit for that. So that's how they finish up the Mishnayot with that Mishnah. So the fact that we all came together to learn in the schut of Todros Ben Mayer is a very good way that we were able to bring shalom, bring peace. My father said that there are 4 people from 4 different continents that learned in honor of my grandfather. So it's a big deal. And I think that this idea is also something that characterized Wu. He knew how to bring people together. He helped bring my parents together by sending my mom a plane ticket to come visit my dad in Florida. And my father tells stories in the nursing home how he would be a great conflict resolver. And what a better way to spread shalom, peace between people, than have a great cruise on the Boston Harbor. And I'm sure there's a lot more people who have different stories on how Wu was a comforting figure who brought peace to their lives. I think Wu was a peaceful, extremely good-hearted person that many people learned from. So I think that this last Mishnah and this whole siyum of Shas are very, very relevant to him. And it's still very weird to think and talk about woo-woo in the past tense. His presence is very much missed in this world, but I'm sure that everyone is enjoying his presence somewhere else, and that he's also enjoying the 300 times the goodness than the life that he led here, which must be pretty amazing for him. I'm also sure that in the schut of everyone learning this Mishnah and finishing the Shas, that his neshama is having an even greater aliyah. So I want to again thank everyone for taking part in this amazing feat of finishing all of the Mishnah. Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Hadran alach Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'Hadra Chalan. Datan alach Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'Data Chalan. Lo nitnasei minach Shisha Sidrei Mishnah v'lo nitnasei minan lo b'alma hadin lo b'alma date. Arev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha befinu b'pipiyot amcha Beit Yisrael v'niyah אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל כולנו יודעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. מאויבי תחכמני מצוותיך כי עולם היא לי. יהי ליבי תמים בחוקיך למען לא אבוש. לעולם לא אשכח פקודיך כי במחייתני ברוך אתה אדוני למדני חוקיך. אמן 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 סלע ועד. מודים אנחנו לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ולאבותינו ששמת חלקנו מיושבי בית המקדש ולא שמת חלקנו מיושבי קרנות. שאנו משכימים והם משכימים. אנו משכימים לדברי תורה והם משכימים לדברים פתילים. אנו עמלים והם עמלים. אנו עמלים ומקבלים שכר והם עמלים ואינם מקבלים שכר. אנו רצים והם רצים. אנו רצים לחיי עולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת שנאמר ואתה אלוהים תורידם לבאר שחת אנשי דמים ומרמה לא יחצו עמהם ואני אפתח בך. יהי רצון לפניך אדוני אלוהינו כשעזרתנו לסיים שישה סדרי משנה, כן תעזרנו להתחיל סדרים וספרים אחרים לסיימם, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור, לעשות, לקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, ובזכות כל התנאים ותלמידי חכמים הנזכרים בשישה סדרי המשנה, תעמוד לנו לזרענו שלא תמוש התורה מפינו ומפי זרענו וזרע זרענו עד עולם. ותקיים בנו בהתהלכך, תנחה אותך, ושכבך תשמור עליך, והקיצותה היא תשיחך, כי בה ירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים, אורך ימים בימינה ושמאלה, עושר וכבוד, אדוני עזרנו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. Since we don't have 10 men together, we don't say Kaddish. So I'd like to call upon Asher Glass, Wu's youngest grandson from Kansas, to say a few words. And I want to thank Asher in the name of all of the cousins for being there on the, I guess, I don't want to say front lines, but really being with Bubu and Wu and representing the grandkids for the past few years, with the good and the bad. And we really appreciate it, Ash. So go ahead. Love you.
Yeah, so hello everybody. As I was writing this, I didn't know what to say. So I was thinking about it and I said to myself, I'm gonna write about some things we shared. And yeah, so first of all, we were both colorblind. That's one. Second, we were both on the same haircut, which always came from my mom and was always a buzz cut. And third, we both love our hometown football team, even though we agreed to disagree. And last but not least, my first Aliyah and Wu's last Aliyah was June 2nd, 2019 at my bar mitzvah. That was also the last time he was in shul. I'm so happy that he was able to come to shul for my bar mitzvah. I know that he was so proud of me. I could tell by the look in his eyes and the smile on his face. I'm grateful that he could share that day with me. Speaking of smiles on his face, every time that I rode my bike to Bubu and Wu's, every time I went into the kitchen, he always put his hand out for a handshake and had a big smile on his face. I'm really lucky that Bubu and Wu here when I'm, because if here, I would not have a pool to swim in every summer, and I would not see my favorite mom's parents whenever I want. Other good memories with him are some of his stories that he told me. One of my favorite stories was you can wear underwear 4 times before washing again. One normally, one backward, one inside out backward, and one inside out forward. Let's just say that in Boy Scouts, I may have used one of those ideas. He also told me that it's okay to pee in the pool as long as no one was looking. My brother Netanel told me a story that when he was on his boat, he used to fight pirates with his shoe. Other fun things that I did with him were being in Israel and riding around with him on his scooter. And when he would feel my cheeks, and he would always ask me, "Did you shave today?" And my dad would always tell me to say, "Gay kafna." And he would always reply saying, "Wise guy." He taught me to love going to shul and to love Shabbat and to sometimes make good decisions. He also taught me that it's okay to cry during the national anthem. That is not all the good memories I had, but there are many to this. Overall, I miss Wu so much, and I will always miss him, especially when Dovi taunts me about never going on his boat. But seriously, I work hard every day to make Wu proud. I am now going to invite Benji up to say a few words. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I am the grandson-in-law. I'm going to say a few words in Wu's memory. I didn't get to know Wu in his heyday, but when I think of what I have learned about him these past 30 days, in addition to the times that I was zoche to be in his presence, there are 2 terms that come to mind. One is hazorim bedim'a berina yiktzoru. Those who tearfully sow will reap in glad song. And the second is ve'ahavta l'ra'acha kamocha. Love thy neighbor as thyself. We can go with ve'ahavta l'ra'acha kamocha. We can go with the classic example that Nechama displayed in the funeral, that even though I was a Mets fan and a Giants fan, who accepted me into the family without any hesitation. But we don't have to talk about that too much. Honestly, I felt the connection with Wu much more than what we spoke about, the different acceptances, but actually a grandfather-grandson connection. The way he spoke with me and looked at me, I didn't feel like I was coming into the family, but more like I've been part of it all along. I don't know if it's because I didn't have a living grandfather for many years, but it was a connection that I would cherish, and I still do. Whenever we were in the States, Nechama knows, we had to go to Kansas. I would always put my foot down as it was a must. The zchut of being able to bring Shachar to meet Wu and to be with Bubu was worth everything. Sometimes even the allergic reactions. Wu made you feel special because he was a charmer. With his golden chai necklace and his cheek-to-cheek grin that would make his eyes squint, he made you feel at that moment that you're the only one in the world. I had the zchut of having one of my students that I teach actually learn a masechet in Wu's name. And he actually sent me twice. But yesterday when he said Salik, whatever masechet, I'm not going to say, but when he said Salik, he said that it was the best thing that he did in this whole COVID time. And he was actually very happy to be part of the siyum because it actually put him back on track in learning Torah frequently, something that the COVID pandemic caused him to totally falter in. And it was like an ignition to his engine, which hadn't been started for a while. And when he sent me that message, the first thing I thought was that's Wu. Even in his passiveness, he made people better. He guided them to reach their full potential. From the stories I've heard, he was a modest, hardworking man who became an administrator, who through example made those surrounding him better people. You wanted to be in Wu's presence because it made you better. You wanted to be better for Wu because he wanted to be better for you. I don't recall honestly referring to Wu as captain. I don't think I ever did. And I referred to him as Wu, the grandfather. I never got to see him as captain, so it never resonated with me. For him, he was the grandfather, the one person who glowed and make you feel like you're glowing. It was this mutual feeling of just glowingness. Wu was a man with class, with fearlessness, with pride in what he accomplished, and pride in his beautiful family. But mostly, he showed us that azolim bedima berina iktzol, all through the eyes of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. He sowed with tears of hard work throughout his life, but boy, was he glad with what came of it. He shows it all the time with his love for his family, and we still feel it today in these past 30 days. Thank you for being supportive, for loving us then and now, and for inspiring us to continue to want to be better people. Tiyeh nishmacha tzrura b'tzror chaim. Amen. I'd like to, after sharing my few thoughts, I'd like to call upon my brother-in-law, Yoni, the other grandson-in-law, to share a few words.
Thank you, Benji. Good evening, everyone. In last week's Parsha, we read about the Ptira of Sarah, and we saw how Avram worked so hard negotiating. I like all the negotiations, so I was learning about the negotiation he went through, and he paid a lot of money for that special place. And it's really a question. What's the big deal? Why not just bury her in the backyard? Why didn't he need to work so hard and pay so much money for a grave, for a special place for Sarah, for a covered place for Sarah? Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein from Bnei Brak, he got a question, a very interesting question a few years ago from one of the residents in Bnei Brak that was a Holocaust survivor. That guy told him an interesting story. He said, when the war started, the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, killed my mother, and my father and me, we managed to escape. We got to a house of a non-Jew woman, and she agreed to have us and keep us safe. In order to avoid any questions, they got registered as married, and they were there in that house for many years. After a couple of years, they started to have a personal connection, and the father and the non-Jew woman had another non-Jew son. The war was over, and the father and the non-Jewish family left to America. The father, of course, like a nice Jewish man, did a lot of money in America, and the son, the Jewish son, left to Eretz Israel. He moved to Bnei Brak, and many years passed, and suddenly the Jewish son, getting a phone call from his brother in the States, telling him his father passed away, and he left an inheritance, a very nice inheritance of $25 million each. That guy went straight on the airplane, flew to America, but the first thing he did is going to his brother and said, I want to take my father back to have a Jewish burial in Israel. So his non-Jew brother said, no, don't worry about it. I already bought him a plot here next to my non-Jewish mother, and he's going to be buried in the Christian cemetery. That, the Jewish son was so shocked, didn't know what to do. He started to argue with him. He said, no, you can't do it. He grew up as a Jewish man. You can't put him in a Christian cemetery. He needs to have a Jewish burial. So the son didn't know what to do. He said, you know what? He started business, right? You know what? Take $50,000, give me my father. I'll take him back to Israel. So the non-Jews saw, it's very important to that son. He said, you know what? I'll give you father but pay me the full $25 million. They went to court. Court said, you know what, we'll use the judgment of Solomon's story. Burn the body, and each one will get half of the ash. Now the son had a bigger problem, and he's asking Rabbi Zilberstein, what should I do? Do I need to pay $25 million in order to get my father to Israel and get a Jewish burial? Rabbi Zilberstein answered that halachically, before the kids get any inheritance, they need to use the money of the niftar for a Jewish burial. And whatever's left, they can have. So he said, you need to use the $25 million to bring your father to a Jewish burial. Another unfortunate story is in May 2004, a missile was fired in Rafiah and hit a group of soldiers that were working there, clearing tunnels. And unfortunately, officer and four soldiers were killed over there, and their body parts were blown to pieces all around. This place next to Rafiah is one of the most dangerous places to stand, but the soldiers from his unit said, we're not leaving without our friends. They went down on four, they straightened a line, and they started moving forward and picking up body parts of their friends. Unfortunately, another 2 additional soldiers were killed there while they were guarding these soldiers. They all put themselves into a risk in order to bring their friends to a proper burial. Baruch Hashem, Wuwu was zoche to be buried here in Israel. And I hope it's okay, I'm sharing it with you, but when Auntie Adina and Abba went to say their final goodbye here in Israel to Wuwu, just before we started the Levaya, Auntie Adina said to Wuwu, Daddy, we brought you to Israel. We brought you home. From these stories, we can see how important the mitzvah of burial in Judaism. Some of the halachic poskim, the opinions in halacha says it's even a mitzvah d'oraita. And the question is, why is it such a big deal? Why is it so important? Why are we not allowed to operate a body or to take out the bones if there's not a very good reason? The Torah respects the dead body that doesn't feel anything or know anything as it was alive. I think that what the Torah is trying to teach us is if the Torah is commanding us to give such a respect to a dead body that doesn't feel anything, we need to do a kal v'chomer. We need to understand how much we need to respect and be sensitive to each and every human being. In the last 6 years, I had the zchut, as Benji said, we had a little bit of a taste of Wuwu. We've been zochet to know him a little bit. And from what I knew him, about him, and what the stories, we learned a lot in the Levaya and the Shiva, how he knew how to make each and everyone happy and put a smile on their face, even if it was the most simplest person in the room, such as the man who was having a hard time washing dishes in his nursing home. We can take this lesson from Wuwu of being sensitive to each other and saying a good word to make the other happy, and that way keeping his legacy. I will finish with the Gemara and Ta'anit. The Gemara and Ta'anit giving a mashal of a person who was in the desert, a very hot desert, and he was tired, he was thirsty, and suddenly he found a tree with sweet fruits, nice shade, and water running under it. He ate from the fruits, he drank from the water, and he sat in the shade. When he wished to leave, he said, Ilan ilan bama vachecha, tree, with what should I bless you? If I say to you that your fruit should be sweet, your fruit's already sweet. If I say your shade should be pleasant, your shade is already pleasant. If I say that a stream of water should flow beneath you, just a stream of water already flows beneath you. Rather, I will bless you as follows. May it be God well that all plants which they plant from you will be just like you. As someone who married into the family, I can say that Wu had many beautiful qualities. But what was so nice to see is what beautiful children Bubu and Wu raised. The super amazing Auntie Adina and our special and lovable Abba, and how much nachat he had from his amazing children, grandchildren, and Baruch Hashem, great-grandchildren. The special and big smile all Solomons got from Wubu will continue, Bezrat Hashem, to light up the world for many more years to come. Wubu, my buddy, we love you and we miss you very much already. I would like to call up Cousin Jay to say a few words.
So many familiar faces, family and friends. I only wish it were under different circumstances. I prepared some brief remarks, but first I want to take a moment to thank Adina, Ari, and Judy for giving Deborah and me the opportunity to express Divrei Hesped in memory of our dear cousin David. Although 30 days have passed since his Patira, the pain of David's loss is still very much with us. As we all know, cousin David had been in declining health for a number of years, and so his passing didn't shock us, but our hearts were no less broken. The enormous outpouring of sympathy following David's passing has been a source of great consolation. Yet, even while we have begun to heal, the sadness in many ways is deeper than ever as we grapple with the reality that David's smile will no longer cheer us, David's empathy will no longer comfort us, and his love will no longer embrace us. Growing up, cousin David was referred to as Big David. That way we could distinguish him from my brother, who's also named David. Both Davids, big and little, were named after our grandfather, Reb Todros Ben Mayer Solomont. When our grandfather Todros was 18 years old, he, along with about 30 other young men, were arrested by the Russian Tsar's police for having revolutionary literature that was forbidden. After 20 years spent in captivity in Siberia, our grandfather received a pardon, and he managed to contact his parents, who sent him money to go to Boston. Middle-aged Todros found a young wife, Alice Elka Dreza, and together they had 3 sons, cousin David's father, our dear Uncle Meyer, Uncle Cy, and my own father, Avi Mori. Our grandfather Todros moved the family to Lowell, where there were jobs in the sweater mills, and they settled in a neighborhood of Eastern European Jewish immigrants. They were very poor, but they were very devout. Todros did not have the benefit of a formal Jewish education, but apparently planted deep in his heart was an abiding love and immutable devotion to Yiddishkeit for the precious Masorah that is passed along from one generation to the next. Why am I sharing this with you? Because I was thinking to myself, how remarkable a life our cousin Todros led when viewed through the prism of our grandfather's arduous, if not sometimes tortuous, journey. Cousin David arrived in this world with many blessings and advantages our Zaidi could never have imagined. Such blessings might have easily been exploited selfishly and wantonly. But David, who certainly lived his life to the fullest, channeled the blessings he was given into building a beautiful home together with his life partner, cousin Judy, to whom he was married for nearly 60 years. He did not, as some might have done, abandon the Masorah that was so precious to our Zaidi, but rather cousin David understood that far more precious than any material wealth was the Yiddishkeit to which our Zaidi clung with such dedication and faith. David and Judy went to all lengths to provide Adina and Ari with a proper Jewish education. Cousin David had dedicated himself to supporting the Montefiore Synagogue, the Merrimack Valley Hebrew Academy, because he knew that that was the best means available to transmit the precious Masorah to his children. Guided by the values and precepts of the Masorah, Adina and Ari chose life partners with whom they built beautiful homes, infused with a dedication to Torah, mitzvot, to the very Masorah handed down from Todros to Todros. Big David was Kishmo Kenhu, a larger than life figure. He lived his life with enthusiasm, with energy, and with joy, but at the same time, he was a worthy heir and a faithful guardian of the Masorah passed on to him by his forebears. Cousin David left us 90 years following the patira of his namesake, Reb Todros. Now he is reunited with our grandfather Todros and with his parents, our dear Uncle Meyer and Aunt Ruth, Zichronam Livracha. Together, they're kvelling at the beautiful family they left behind, confident that the Masorah will endure, Lidorei Dorot, Ad Biat Goel HaMashiach, Tehei Nafsho Tzura B'tzur HaChayim. I now have the pleasure of introducing my wife, Cousin Deborah. Deborah? Deborah, I think you're muted. If only there were a mute button in everyday life. I didn't mean it for me personally, I just meant in general.
Okay, I'll start again. I'm not on the roster, but I'm going to have the special zchut to introduce our cousin Judy. I want to thank Ari, Adina, and family for giving me this zchut. Thank you, Jay, as well. Judy will be our next speaker. She's your mother and my best friend. I can't say that my first encounter with Judy was the most pleasant. Deborah who? But once we really met, everything just clicked. Judy and David were more than our cousins. They were our friends, our pseudo-parents when we moved to Lowell. I learned so much from Judy and David, a true dynamic duo. They were balei chesed par excellence, the first to volunteer to roll up their sleeves. After a busy day, you would find them at Montefiore Synagogue planning the next event, getting the show ready. Every Friday night, we sing Eshet Chayil. We come to Sheker HaChaim Vehevel HaYofi, Isha Yirat Hashem Hitalal. Charm is deceptive and beauty is vain. It is the God-fearing woman who deserves praise. The gematria for the word Chaim is 58. Judy and David had just celebrated their 58th anniversary. I would actually interpret this pasuk to say that Judy is filled with charm, inner and outer beauty, and throughout this difficult period in her life has true emunah in Hashem. We love you, Judy, and we're here for you, and we look forward to hearing your beautiful words.
Mute. There you go. Okay, can you hear me? You can't, okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. It's been a long haul getting to this point. I don't have words of Torah, but I do have words that will help you understand what David went through for the last 4 years of his life. And dementia is a terrible disease. But before I talk about David, I want to thank everybody in our little shtibel in Overland Park, Kansas. Just before David had his stroke, which was the beginning of the end for him, I tested positive for the coronavirus. And I was in quarantine so I was not allowed to go into the kitchen. And our little community of wonderful cooks and bakers provided food for the family, for me and whoever else was over here to join us. David was getting food from Torah Learning Center. They have the kosher meals on wheels, and they were providing food for him every day. But I don't eat meat, so I didn't ask them to prepare food for me, but the community did. And every single day, food arrived like manna from heaven. And at some point, I didn't even know who brought the food in. So I can't even thank specifically all those wonderful people who helped us get through my quarantining. While I was quarantining for the virus, David had the stroke. And I was tested again, and thank God I tested negative. So they let me out of my room, my little prison, that I quarantined in. And I came downstairs to where David was, where he was, his room, our bedroom, and his caregivers. I just can't say enough about his caregivers, but the community continued to provide food for us every single day. No matter how many people were here, we could feed an army from all the wonderful goodies that our community provided to us. Everything was delicious. Unfortunately, as I said, I don't specifically know who brought what at this point, but I will just give a general thank you. And after David's stroke, he couldn't swallow anymore, and he couldn't chew anymore. And his eyes, even though he was looking at you, you didn't really know what he saw or what he heard or what he understood. But he was very calm, and it was good to know that if he was calm, then he was at peace. And 6 days later, he passed away. Ari had come in from Israel already. Dovie came in from Baltimore. Becky, Dovie's girlfriend, also came in because she knew that when Ari, Adina, and Dovie went to Israel for the Levaya, I would be alone in the house. And so Becky stayed with me for the whole time, and she stayed with us through the whole Shiva. And I can't thank her enough. I'm happy that when the time comes, she will be my daughter-in-law, more like a daughter. But she's just a wonderful person, and I have to acknowledge what she did for us. She cooked and she shopped and she cleaned, and you just couldn't ask for a better daughter-in-law. I'm sorry, future daughter-in-law. And then everybody came back to the house for a week of Shiva, and our house was constantly, it was like a balagan here sometimes with people, and we had to be very creative in Shiva because of the COVID virus. So the show provided us with the plexiglass separators that we'd put on a table. I would sit on one side, person would sit on the other side, or they would sit outside and I would be inside, and then they'd call me on my phone because I had trouble hearing through the door. And it was much better for them to call me. I could hear them through my hearing aids. So I have to say, as sad as this entire situation was, I was totally surrounded by my family, our friends, people called from far away. One of our rabbis from Lowell actually came from Minneapolis to pay a shiva call. And I think shiva is an experience that at the end of shiva, there's a calmness. You've had a whole week to talk about David and what went on in his life. And a lot has been said about David and the wonderful things that he did. And he was a behind the scenes man. Believe it or not, he was even a little shy. And he was never out there, but he was always in the background, making sure that everything was just right. So that was our experience during Shiva. Now I want to go back and talk about David's disease, and this horrible disease that takes away your memory and everything, that takes away your personality. He started actually showing signs of dementia about 6 years ago, and got into a few car accidents, had his license taken away, which he was not happy with because I became his chauffeur. He did not like the way I drove, so there was always yelling in the car. But that's part of the dementia, is letting go and having things happen to you that you don't even know how or why they happened. And without a car, he didn't have, if he wanted to go somewhere, I took him wherever he had to go. As time went on, he needed help getting dressed. He needed help eating. He needed help with all his private things that he had to do every day. And for 2 years, I took care of him all by myself. I got him into the shower and other places, and I dressed him, I fed him, I cooked for him. He went from a cane to a walker to a wheelchair. And after 2 years, my kid said, "Mom, you have to get caregivers." So we got caregivers, and at the end, he had 24-hour round-the-clock caregivers. But what dementia does is it takes away your identity. And when just to give you an example, if I was watching a movie about David's life, and David was sitting next to me in the movie theater, and we were watching the movie, he didn't know that that was him on the screen. It's just an incredible experience, and Hashem, in his infinite wisdom, did that. So the person going through dementia didn't have the pain of knowing that they were losing their mind and they were losing their ability to function, because Hashem made sure that the person with the disease wasn't fraught by the terrible feelings that you would have had if you knew that your life was, your brain was being taken away from you. And I just can't explain any more than that, but we would take care of him, and he would just smile. Eventually he stopped talking and there was no communication. He would try to say words and he couldn't say them. He would try to express what he wanted, but he couldn't get the words out. At the very end, the last week or so after he had the stroke, there was the brightness in his eyes was gone. You could clap your hands in front of his face and he didn't even respond. That I thought was quite incredible, because I knew, that he sees, but you don't realize that there's no response. And the last few days, the last day of his life, which was on Shabbos, we were just watching him. The hospice nurse was with us, and I climbed into bed with him. It was kind of funny, but I just had this urge that I just had to hold him. And I climbed into bed with him. I put my arms around him. I put my head on his shoulder, and I just laid there with him and talked to him. And then the hospice nurse said, "He's gone." And I didn't even know his passing was so peaceful that here I am holding him and hugging him and talking to him. And it just happened. He just left us just like that. And everybody was there. Everybody who had come to our house, everybody was there around his bed every single day. We didn't leave him alone for 1 minute. And I just want to thank all my family for being with me at a very difficult time in my life. And I can see it's going to be a long haul to get over the sadness. But thank you, everybody, for all that you've done for me. And it has definitely been appreciated and has not gone unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you, Boo. On behalf of my mother, my sister, and I wanted to thank everyone for joining today, for all those who've learned for this siyum, and to thank Dov, Benji, and Yoni for organizing the learning, and to everyone, as my mother said, for all the Shiva calls, the texts, emails, the Zooms, the Facebook messages, the WhatsApps, the FaceTimes, and since Shiva, all those who continue to be Mekayim the mitzvah, to fulfill the mitzvah of Nichum Avelim, comforting mourners, which can be done for an entire year. People who called from so many parts of our lives and from my father's life. I wanted to especially thank the Elitzurs, Rivka and Shai, our Mechutanim, for their incredible kindness, which ensured Kfurat Eretz Yisrael for my father. It will be a book in itself someday. I'd like to thank Rabbi Hachberg and Rabbi Rakoff for their beautiful tributes during Shiva and for their dedication over so many years to my father's friendship, and to Rabbi Glass for his guidance and his efforts before our father's Batira and on our behalf during the week of Shiva. And again, to the entire BIAV community for being so embracing and loving and helpful to my mother and my sister. In truth, each call and expression of Tanchumin was so special and meaningful. And although there were Chashiva Rabbanim, chief rabbis, deans, the Boston Rebbe, university presidents, YU students, people from Lowell, people who worked and interned with my father at Academy, NCSYers, our friends and family. Each expression of comfort of Tanchumin gave us the opportunity to share stories and find insight into my father's life, to grieve and to grieve. They were all special, so beautiful, and so meaningful, and so very appreciated. But there were a few expressions of Tanchumin that were different. Not that they were more important or more special, but different. And I'd like to take a moment to share them with you. The first was Zoom calls from the children of our NCSYers. Young children whose parents taught them, as our father taught us, even at a young age, that the price of love is the agony of grief. And every person can go beyond themselves to give someone comfort, someone else comfort. And how the simple question, tell me a story about your father, could bring such comfort and even happiness during such a sad time. So I would like to make a special mention of Ike, Olivia, Sophia, and even Liel, and to Amos and Odelia, and to thank their parents for not only being great students, but even better teachers. The second was after we landed back in Chicago, after the Levaya, before our connecting flight back to Kansas City. I was waiting for my sister at one of her many bathroom investigations, as my father would call them. A man inconspicuously dressed with a Yankee hat, waiting for his next flight, noticed my torn jacket and shirt, the markers of a mourner. And he said to me in his finest Yiddish accent, "Are you an Uvil?" And in the middle of Concourse E, at one of the busiest airports in the world, he stood up. He stood up and said, "Amoka minachem eschem." Even as strangers, we are connected as brothers. And finally, during our flight back from Israel, there was a fellow sitting across the row from me that was getting a bit more attention from security. I recognized who it was. So I built up enough courage to get his attention. And I won't impress you with my Hebrew, so I'll just say it in English. I said it would be an honor for my father if the defense minister of the state of Israel and the alternative prime minister would fulfill the mitzvah of Nichem Avelim. He stopped, he put his things down, and he looked at me and he said, "What was your father's name?" "Where did he live?" "What did he do?" "How old was he?" And he asked what I did, and that totally confused him. And at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, one of the most powerful ministers of the Knesset said, "Anachnu mishtatfim chem." The Minister of Defense said, "We join you in your sorrow." And the truth is, we have not felt alone. And the idea that no Avel is ever alone and that our pain and our loss is shared by our entire people is extraordinary. And both my mother and my sister have felt that the pain of our father's loss is not only experienced by our family, but it is shared by the entire Jewish people. And that has been the most comforting of all. As Sarah Beth always says, may we continue to comfort each other in our sorrows and rejoice in our celebrations. I'm going to make a l'chaim because my father would always appreciate a good l'chaim. And I'll make a bracha, we'll answer amen, we'll be in my father's sukkos. And then I'll try to figure out how to unmute everyone here. And we can have, as Elisheva said at the very beginning, a very chaotic conversation. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
L'chaim. Okay, now let me try that. And this concludes I really don't know how to unmute everybody, so.
Everyone can unmute
Gonna mute
themselves.
ourselves. Yes,
Okay, the
Koach
person
Ari and the whole family.
participants.
Very beautiful. Just beautiful. It's close to your father's in
Thank you, Rabbi
Shlomo.
Achman. Thank you. Can everybody unmute themselves if they want to? They can do one by one alphabetically.
Well,
Wait, can
Ari, I'm
you?
here. Oh, someone's talking.
I see Simon Goldman.
Sephora wants to talk. Sephora, you can
Can I
talk.
say a couple words? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, just leave Louis Nishmato. Beautiful. As I said earlier from the Levaya and from listening to this, there's just a man I never met and wish I had. You should just be comforted from all the beautiful memories and the beautiful grandchildren that he has, because it blows me away, the beauty and the love that they have for each other.
Thank you, Tzipora. We need you back on this side of the pond, so as soon as you can come back.
So I wanted to say a few words. You know, while I'm not part of your family, BJ and I, we are in a sense in that we spent a lot of time in Lowell. Can somebody go on mute? I think.
If you can just mute, please. Thank you.
So in a sense, we are family because in many ways, when we moved to the Lowell area, among the first people we met were David and Judy and Ari and the rest of the family. And it was an amazing thing they showed you how to love Shabbos in all dimensions. And many years later, like 3 years ago, I happened to be in South Africa, BJ and I, and we were at the Ace, and there was a wedding. A friend of ours from here in Minneapolis, his daughter married a guy from the Jewish community in South Africa. It's a beautiful area. We went on a safari. But I was sitting at Sheloshim, and a guy says, "Where are you from?" I said, you know, the U.S. He says, "Oh, my wife is from the U.S. She's from Lowell, Massachusetts." And I said, "Who is that?" And he said, I believe Sandra Frankel. I noticed that Dana's on. The point I'm making is that David and Judy and Ari and the rest of all of you gave us a light in many of us, the love of Shabbos, the love of Yiddishkeit. David and Judy, you're just amazing people. David Oliver Sholem. They were just so humble, and they were so appreciative of every Jewish soul. You know, our kids are product of the school, and thank God they did extremely well. They're doing extremely well. And the school, the kids were in the 90th percentile on all the tests, but also Yiddishkeit. My son got into Maimonides in about 3 minutes from the school. Now, we ended up moving to Minnesota, and he went to school at the local school here. But in Maimonides, I parked the car, and they told me how tough the interview was going to be. And I walked in, and there's my son, my older son, Isaac. And I said, "Isaac, you haven't seen the guy yet?" "No, I opened up the Talmud. I started going through it." And he said, "You're in." This was an unbelievable school. And it was David, and it was Cy, and it was the other David, and it was Ari, and it was Judy, and all of you. We were very blessed to have all of you in our lives. And you're definitely family to us. But David, my God, he was unbelievable. You know, he would get up, and at the end, you always felt this, you know, how warm everything was. And I'll leave you with a thought, which was classic David. So if you think the Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl, Adon Olam is on page 38. If you think they won't, Adon Olam is on page 180. He will be really missed. And I just wanted to thank the Solomons family for all you're doing and all you've done for Yiddishkeit, and how you have all blessed all of us by being in your world. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. We miss you.
Same here.
Out of sight is not out of mind. Who's going to try to go next?
I'll go next. Hi. I just wanted to respond to Judy, whose words made me cry. When my grandmother died many years ago, I said at her funeral that she was so lucky to die with her children with her, and they were singing to her and they held her hand, and she passed away in a comfortable bed with her children singing to her and holding her hands. And so many people in her family had been killed in the Holocaust, and having a death like that is such a privilege, and it's not something to be taken for granted. And I just hope that you know that the death you gave him sounds so beautiful. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Really sweet.
Hmm? Okay. No one's obligated to say anything. So if we'll leave it open for a few minutes.
Ari, can I interrupt for a second? Hi.
Sure.
Okay. For everyone who doesn't know who I am, if you look at me, you probably know that I'm a Solomont. I'm David's sister. And I didn't think of saying anything, but I have so many things that I would love to add that maybe at some later point we could do a family Zoom. I have so many stories that I'd love to share, and fun things that you would get a kick out of, and just sweet things and nice things. And I'd like to talk about my parents too, who gave my brother and me the beginnings that we got. And then my brother passed it on for a legacy for his wonderful family. As I see you all here, I wish you were closer, but we're here down here in Florida, and you're far away, but hopefully COVID will be over and we'll get over to Israel. And it's just, as I say, beautiful, wonderful, fun, silly stories that brothers and sisters can share. And I was telling my cousin Judy last week when I was talking with her, I said, it's really sad because my brother and I shared so much, and now those stories are gone. And she said to me, she said, no, she said, she's got them too. So maybe my cousins will get on Zoom and we can tell even more stories. I think you'd enjoy hearing them. We had such a great time, and I'll always miss them. So love you guys.
Thank you, Auntie Harriet.
Glad to hear it.
Abs, can I speak?
Sure. Who was that? I don't know who that was.
I'm Dove's girlfriend.
Hello, Dove's girlfriend. She has a title.
Daughter-in-law. And I did not get to know Woo Woo as long as I would have liked, but we were really fortunate, Dove and I, in August, to go visit Woo Woo and Boo Boo. And we had a week with them, and Auntie Adina and Uncle Norman, and my favorite little cousin Asher, my only little cousin. And the week was magnificent. I can't, I know Boo Boo talked about his disease and how hard that is. But what was so amazing about Captain Woo Woo was how his personality really did show through that terrible disease. We were fortunate enough to spend day on day and sitting with him, holding his hand while he listened to his grandson play piano, and we played Go Fish, and he actually was playing cards with us and talking with us, telling Dove, I'm like, what do we say? And he says to Dove, Go Fish. It was very, very special to spend that time with him. But I think the most important thing was when I asked him, did I make the cut? And he nods his head and gives a big, big smile. And that was very, very special to me to know that I had his blessing. But I do want to thank him and the legacy that he left behind for raising such beautiful children, and Ari and Adina, and their significant others, and marrying such good people like Sarah Beth and Norman, and raising the grandchildren to be such good people and such warm, loving, accepting people. And I can't wait to be part of such a wonderful legacy and a wonderful family. So thank you, Woo Woo, for everything.
Dove, do you have any more announcements?
No, we did that once. Once is enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could just say that we were very lucky to be together in August with Wool.
Want to thank everyone for joining. Big zchut for all of us to be with all of you, and we should be able to share smachot. And as my aunt said, maybe we could do more Zooms, not just Zooms like this, but talk about all the great stuff and great memories. And hopefully one day we don't have to be on Zoom, and we can be together in real life again soon. Oh, Papa wanted to say something. Is Papa there?
Go to the next page.
Wait a minute, Papa is over here. Let me help them
Here,
unmute.
Guys, they're not muted, but we can't hear them.
Papa,
Grandma?
mute.
Grandma and Papa, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
All right, good. I just wanted to say a few words before we broke up. I was thinking back in time when our first interaction with David was when Ari and Sarah Beth were courting. And Ari and the Solomont were in Florida. And you've heard this before, and I'll say it again. Sarah Beth had taken to go down to the family. Quite unexpectedly, felt that Ari needed to have Sarah in his life. And he felt that it was important that he taken the family and took it on himself and take it to Sarah. The second act that I want to quickly remember is, and we've said this before, I'll say it again, when we first went up to Lowell to meet Judy and David for the fourth. This was about 86 years ago, was it? I must have said 36 years ago. We went out of the airport, and we found the limousine waiting for us. And that was David welcoming us to his family with a limousine. I just wanted to bring those two things over because it really illustrated David's enormous generosity of spirit, his embrace of family values. He embraced, he and Judy both embraced Marge and I, unquestioned from the very beginning. We felt like kissing cousins, or more than kissing cousins. We were on the same path. And we felt very comfortable in the shul in Lowell. We had just become from. And we are in a delicate position, and we felt welcome throughout, and whatever we said over was accepted without any criticism from the Yiddishkeit point of view. And we were very grateful for that. I'm sorry that for the last 6 or 7 years, David has not been in a position really to have a conversation with us in any deep, meaningful way. He was always sitting when we came to Hashman night, he was always sitting in the kitchen smiling at us, had a few words to say to us. But by that time, there was nothing in depth. So my mind goes back to the original time when we met David and Judy. And that's what I really hold in my mind. I just wanted to give this over to once again reaffirm our appreciation for the Solomons and appreciate the generosity that David has always shown to us. May his name be for a blessing and to all our family.
Amen.
Thank you, Papa.
What did you say?
Abba sends his thanks.
Okay. All right. Again, thank everyone very much. Adina, nice to see you. See Cousin Gabe, Cousin Yehuda. Am I muted? No. Auntie Margie, BJ. I feel like Romper Room here. Anybody remember Romper Room? Let's see. Oh, I see Ike. How you doing, Ike? Wearing the company colors. Okay. Thank you, Boo Boo. Estefay. Barry, my other Mechutanim. Chaim, B'nai Brak. I got some Shamashes on the line there. Nice to see you, Benny. Ben Ner, Ben Shokrla, right? Ben Ner. You got to unmute, Benny. It's good to get people from, aren't too many Ben Ners.
I said you have a memory of an elephant. You remember so many things. And I want to say one little thing about your dad. Can I?
Please, love it.
I remember when we came to Lowell, I was this young guy that I thought I could come in and fix everything. I was on the board. And I remember one board meeting I was sitting, I didn't know who David was. I had no idea who David was, your dad, Zichrono Livracha. I had no idea who he was. And he was obviously very experienced, knew what Lowell was, where Lowell was going. And I was obviously very green, really green in these things. I wanted to help, but I was very green. And I remember saying something to the effect of, I thought that I had the first idea that we should have gone to Chelmsford. Why didn't you guys locate to Chelmsford? Who is running this place anyway? And I remember people looking at me, but there is one person who didn't say anything. It was your dad. Didn't say anything. I didn't know who he was. So we talked, the meeting is over. I go outside and the guy said, do you know that you may have just insulted David? He's the one who's footing all the bills and you're telling him how to run the place. I want to tell you that I felt so small then, but I felt so big because David never brought it up to my attention. Not once. I think he realized that I meant well. You know, I loved Rabbi Hochberg. I loved being where we were. Remember, we used to drive there. We had no choice, but became because we loved it there. But David made it. He never brought that to my face. Never did. And we had good times talking and schmoozing. But every time I think of David, your dad, that's what comes to my mind. He just was a great guy. He was a nice guy, but he really was a great guy with a big heart, huge heart. And
thank you.
Benny, that's a great,
Thanks, Benny.
You're welcome. Mina Shamayim Tanachamu.
Amen. Gotta get the good.
I'm
Spartan
sorry that
music.
I really did not know until your email on Facebook 2 days ago, 3 days ago, that you sent it out for the Sheloshim, and I was dumbfounded. I didn't know. Life is busy, but I didn't.
We rely on Facebook a little too much these days.
I agree, but I'm looking and I'm glad, but at least, you know, the Zoom, something that the Zoom is done. I see your beautiful family, and I see Judy. I haven't seen you guys, your kids, since they were little tiny things. And now they're old.
Thank God for
have their own
Facebook.
families.
Your beautiful children and grandchildren and how they're growing, and it's such a beautiful Kanai Nohara, such a beautiful family. Should have so much nachas. So we
are very lucky.
We share in that nachas.
Thank you. We're
Thank you,
we're
Mr.
very
Solomon.
lucky, extremely lucky. Hi.
Thank you, and send regards to Mara Shamash. Thank you. That's a very meaningful story you told. Thank you very much.
I didn't hear you.
The very meaningful story that you told. So thank you
Yes,
very much.
yes.
And send regards to Mara Shamash. That's for that.
Okay. Thank you. Not bad. Thank you. I feel your pain, and I feel your sorrow. I share your sorrow. But you have a very strong family, and your grandmother is running the place beautifully. I can see she's on top of things. Judy, I want to tell you that I had the COVID too, so me and you are COVID buddies.
I have one more thing to say.
Go ahead.
When David first passed away and we knew we wanted him to be buried in Israel, but we're in America and cemeteries in Israel, and how does that work? And Yoni's father, who I just have, I can't thank you enough, Shai, went to the cemetery, picked out the location for David. He picked out the best location in the whole cemetery and made sure that he would be in a good spot, and just took care of everything for us. In fact, we owe him a few bucks because they don't give you a cemetery plot unless you pay for it right up front. So Shai, don't worry, money's coming. And from the bottom of my heart,
Mom, he paid us back already.
Forever be. What?
He already paid us back. We already paid him back.
Oh, you already paid him back?
We paid him back already.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that. But you will forever be in my graces. And if there's ever anything that I can do for you here in America, just give me a call, because I will do whatever you need, I will take care of for you. And for, let's see, oh goodness.
Right. Thank you, everyone,
Vicky.
for joining tonight. If anybody else has any final last words, we're gonna shut this thing down. It's an hour and a half. Thank you so much for all your patience and for joining us and enriching the Sheloshim and making it more meaningful for all of us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. It was great to see you all.
Great to see everyone.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Love you, boo-boo.
We love you, boo-boo.
And I love you guys.
Mr. Faye, thank you, Mr. Faye,
Guys
for
so much.
Bye, Judy.
Thank you, Cousin Yehuda.
Thank you, everybody.